Hello, my name is Paul Robinson, and in this video, we're going to talk about the Multiverse project. I am the producer for that project, and I really think as an author, you may be interested in what we're trying to accomplish. So, before we get started, I just want to give you a quick, brief introduction to who I am. I am a member of the Public Queens Book Club. That is the largest meet and greet book club in the world. I'm very good friends with Kathy Murphy. She's the founder of that book club, and I also help her with her as a webmaster, help her with a website, help her with her book convention, which is the Girlfriend Weekend convention that she has every year. And I've been reading books since I was in the fourth or fifth grade. And just to give you a little bit more backstory here, I grew up an only child, and I didn't live around other kids because we kind of lived out in a secluded place. So I really had to learn how to entertain myself. And I'm naturally an introvert. And so obviously you have to start doing things like reading books and doing those type of things to entertain yourself as a child if you don't have other kids to be around. I grew in love with reading books and just fiction in general, cartoons. I was a child, obviously, but that's where I started to read books. Why I started reading books was because I was by myself. Now, what I loved to read in those days was paranormal, science fiction, or fantasy type novels. I started reading Goosebumps in the fifth grade when Scholastic would come to our school. That's how I really got started. I moved on from those when I got older to anything that dealt with like any ghost stories. I grew in love with those type of stories until I found my first Dragonlance novel, which is a fantasy based novel series. And just to give you some backdrop into this series, this is really where this project is coming from for me, is that I fell in love with the story world of the Dragonlance, the books, the novels that they were putting out. Dragonlance is actually a storyline in Dungeons and Dragons. You've probably heard of that. In 1997, they had over 190 novels based in this world. I personally have probably bought most of those books and read them. Because once I was hooked, that's all I read for years and years. I made the big mistake of letting a friend, quote unquote, borrow like most of those books, and I never saw those books again. So, you live and you learn, and it really is hard now because I wish I could go back and read them, but that was a lot of money that I had spent on those books, but they're gone now. But it left me wanting more. I wish they still wrote books in this world because I would still buy them, but they don't. They stopped for business reasons and of that nature. But yeah, I still love that world. I love the characters. They're some of the best stories that I think ever been written, and I miss reading about those characters and settings and storylines. But it is what it is, right? So, reading those stories in that world left me wanting to create my own shared world that I had more control over. And so, if you want to know more about this project, you need to first understand what the multiverse is. The multiverse is a theory by scientists that there could be more than one universe in existence. So ideally, there could be more universes out there with other Earths out there, and could be other alternate versions of you out there. It also deals with the complexities of time and space, but obviously this is not provable or unprovable. It's just a theory. But in literature and fiction, there is a unofficial and unorganized multiverse that exists already out there. And if I explain it a little bit further here, every time an author creates a story and characters, they have to create a world or universe around those characters. And so as they write more and more books and more stories, if those books and stories don't exist in the same story world, they're creating new worlds and new universes for those characters to exist in. Well, obviously there are thousands and thousands of authors out there for decades have been writing stories. So there are literally thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of worlds or universes that exist in fiction. And that's just in literature. There's also the movies and everything else. You know, in fiction, there is a multiverse that already exists. So in this project, I'm going to talk a little bit now about what this project is, and then we'll go into the storyline of the project and really just help you to understand what this is and why we're trying to do it. Basically, the Multiverse project is a transmedia project about the fictional multiverse that already exists. So what I just explained, this is a project that's based on what already exists, that fictional multiverse that exists out there. It's supposed to be a shared writing environment, kind of like a shared world that authors can create within. So if you have a concept, if you know the concept of a shared world, this is that, but a lot bigger. And this deals with my passion for wanting to have more creative control over the narrative of a shared world, about what I was just talking about with the Dragonlance novels, where as a reader I have no control over the story, right? Well, I've always wanted to have control over this story and to make sure that it continues. The project is based on short stories, a short story platform that we have built for authors to build a fan base for the worlds, and ultimately we want to build a book club that's dedicated just to stories that exist in the multiverse. So I imagine you're wondering, what exactly is a transmedia project? A transmedia project is just another way of saying a transmedia story or super story. So transmedia means it's a super story that's told through different mediums, such as books, movies, audio dramas, games, the theater, social media, comic books. I mean, there's an infinite amount of ways you can tell stories. And transmedia is not multimedia. Multimedia is taking like one story and telling that same story across all the different mediums. So it would be like taking Harry Potter and then as a novel and taking the same story and just making it a movie, or writing a comic book, but it's still the same exact story as the movie and the book. It's the same story. Transmedia is about taking the story world and telling different stories in that story world and telling those stories across the different mediums. So it focuses on the story world. And what I mean by that is, you could tell the protagonist's story through books, and then you could then turn around and tell the antagonist story in the movies. And then maybe there was a character that everybody loved that was in the backdrop of the story. You could tell that story in comic books, and so forth and so on. That is what transmedia is. It's telling multiple stories in a story world across different mediums. Now, examples of that would be comic books, such as Marvel Comics and DC Comics. But the best example of this would be Star Wars. And so let me just give you some little backdrop to this. In 1976, two movies were similar were released. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which that was done by Steven Spielberg, and then you had Star Wars: A New Hope, which was done by George Lucas. Now, Close Encounters of the Third Kind was a big success. It did very well. But Star Wars not only did well, but it became a $50 billion international brand. Now, how did that happen? It all came down into the philosophy and the strategy through which both of these directors went about creating these films. Now, still, Steven Spielberg just created a great film, right? But George Lucas, his whole thought process was, I want to create a world, a story world, and I want to tell a lot of stories in that story world. So the way he filmed Star Wars is that he had a main story, which was the Skywalker story that we all have come to know and love. But he also made sure that he had in frame characters from that story that you could see the characters and say, oh, that's an interesting looking character. I wonder what his story is. That's an interesting character over there. I wonder who their story is. And each one of those characters had a story. they just happen to be in the backdrop of the main story. And so all of a sudden um, they started writing novels about these secondary characters. And so what you had is a transmedia project where you have the Skywalker story, but then you have all these smaller backdrop stories coming in the form of novels and games and so forth. And that's how it became a $50 billion international brand. And it's just because he created a transmedia project out of his story world. And so that is what we're trying to do, but we want to do that with the story of the multiverse. Now, why transmedia projects? Why would we want to go in that route? Well, if you think about our society and our world today, consumers are being bombarded with story from every direction. That is social media, movies, books, streaming services, gaming. I mean, if you're an author, you're not competing just with other authors for readers. You're competing with everybody. You're competing for attention. You're trying to get people to read your story because story is being told in all these different formats. It's not the 1930s anymore where books was probably one of the main forms of that a person could get their story from. Now it's coming from every medium. And so what transmedia fits the problem very well in that you are taking your story and you're distributing it out into the different mediums. So it becomes a great form of marketing and a great form of sales, but it's just what it is a super story. It's more than just one storyline. And that's why a transmedia project works well in today's world. Not every reader prefers to read a novel more than they would rather watch a movie or listen to an audio drama. So if you know that, then why would you not tell your story or tell stories that exist in your world in those formats to get them interested and into your world, and then direct them to the main story that may be happening in your books? That is the premise of what we're trying to do here. So there is a fact out there. Most people that read books, a lot of them don't read but maybe 1 or 2 books a year. All right. And a lot of it has to do with time. A lot of people are just busy and they don't have time to read a lot of books. A lot of people that have time, they are people who belong to book clubs, and they read many, like 10, 20, 30 books a year, because they love to read. But a lot of people just don't have the time, or they prefer to consume their stories in other formats. But if the story if society is really excited and buzzing about a story, but it's a novel, they'll go read that book. They'll take the time because they realize it's a great time investment to go ahead and read the book, especially if their friends are telling them to read the book. But a lot of people only read 1 or 2 books a year, but they are book readers. And so we don't want to just ignore that segment of the reading population just because, it's harder to reach them. So what I like to use is Harry Potter as an example. Harry Potter started as a novel, but because it became so popular, then they started making movies and other forms of the story. And it is a transmedia story, because now they're doing the Fantastic Beasts. They're telling more stories in that world. But a lot of people who don't read a lot of books took the time to go out and read the Harry Potter books because it was such a phenomenon that was happening in the world. So a lot of people are just like I am. Once I fall in love with a story world, I don't want to leave it. I want to and go to another story world. I want more of that story. I am a person that will binge watch a whole 2 or 3 series of my favorite story on Netflix in a weekend, because once I get in, I don't want to leave. I'm one of those people, and there's a lot of people like me out there. And like once the story ends, it's almost like withdrawal. You have issues, like you're like, I don't want to leave. I like these characters. I want to know more. I want to experience more, right? And so we can either fight that or we can embrace that reality. So let's just take a step back and talk about shared worlds, because remember, a shared world is basically the foundation of a transmedia project. It has value in and of itself. not just the main story, but the world itself. Because the fans, the people who read the stories or watch the stories, they fall in love with the world, and not only just the characters in that world, but the world itself and the mythology of the world. And so, if let's get into from a writer's point of view. What is a shared world? Well, it's just a world in which all the stories exist, right? And if you have a shared world, you usually have a lot of writers writing in that world, and there's a much bigger story happening than just the story that you may be writing on yourself. And the big story is more complex. There are benefits and challenges to writing in the shared world, however, which leads to some authors loving to write in them and some authors hating to write in shared worlds. And so, just for an example, the Vampire Diaries. The Vampire Diaries is a shared world where you have the main series, and then you have the originals, which is a spinoff from that main series. But you have two different sets of characters that have their own stories that's happening in that world. But the characters can cross over in that world, and they do in both the series and in the books. They cross over into one another, but they all exist in that same world. Other examples of this would be Harry Potter, Star Wars, etc. We all know what a shared world is, or should at this point. So why do writers write in shared worlds? Writing can be lonely, and so anytime you can write and be part of something with other people, that can make it a lot less lonely. Also, writers writing for inspiration. If you're writing a story and you get writer's block or whatever, you run out of ideas, you can just simply look at what the people that's writing in your world are doing to get inspiration to write new stories. It's also, you can get help and encouragement from one another. And it's just kind of cool to be a part of a bigger story. You're contributing to this really big story that's happening. So other benefits of writing in a shared world: readers become fans of the story world, which sets up a new writer or a new story to be successful, because you're willing to just buy the new story because you want to know what else happened in that world. So it gives you a platform in which to write from. Readers are more open to reading the new stories that exist in that world for that very reason, is what I'm just saying. You have collective marketing efforts that build a fan base. It's the concept of all ships rise with the tide. So if you have, and this happens from more points of entry, because as each author writes their books and put it out in the world, readers are finding that book where they wouldn't find another author's book, but all those readers are being directed to the same world. And then that's where the crossover happens. Then they start reading the other author's books. So as one book becomes successful, all the other books become more successful as well. So it's a collective effort from all the authors. Now, reasons why authors don't want to write in shared universes is that the continuity can be hard to maintain, especially the more complex and the bigger the story gets. It is very imperative that the continuity be maintained, because readers are very sharp on the story. They know when there's a continuity issue, and they will let you know about it. And so that's a reason why a lot of authors are kind of hesitant to join a shared universe. The rules and guidelines are too restrictive. So basically, you have to have rules and guidelines by which govern everyone writing in the same world. You can't have one person writing an apocalyptic book and then years after that happened, write a romance novel about, something that happened in Chicago, because the reader's going to be like, wait a minute, like there's a time continuity issue here. That's not going to work. So there's a lot of rules and guidelines that have to be in place, and authors don't agree sometimes with the direction of the story world itself. And so they have less control over that. And it's just simply a lot of story to keep up with. Now, as implicit as the name is, shared universes means that you have to share. So cooperating and compromising with other writers can become an issue for some people. And so those are reasons why a lot of people don't want to write in a shared world, because they want complete control over their story, their worlds, their universe. They want complete control, which is understandable. So why a multiverse or a shared multiverse is really a great alternative, because based in the basic concept of a multiverse, every writer will be contributing to a story, a main continuity story of the multiverse, but you'd be only writing in your world. You would not have to collaborate with any other writers because it's a multiverse. It's just multiple universes existing in this shared writing environment called a multiverse. And because everyone controls their own universe, they own all the stories. They have complete control, and which is ideal. So nothing really changes for an author except they're still getting the benefits of a shared world without all the downside of collaborative writing, which happens in a shared world itself. So, but it is still connected to the bigger umbrella entity called the multiverse, which has its own storyline that connects everything. So that's what this project is about. It's about creating that multiverse umbrella that's going to bring all of our stories together, give us the benefits of a shared world without the problems of collaborative writing and the problems of a shared world, so that we can grow together. All ships rise with the tide. And so what we've done is we created a platform for readers to explore the multiverse and discover new worlds through short stories. We wanted to create a platform where authors could do all these things and get those benefits without the downfall of the collaborative writing. And we wanted authors to be able to build a fan base without having to focus so much on marketing and sales, because most writers are not very good marketers and salesmen, because you're really you're a creative mind, right? So you're trying to flip your creative mind into a technical and a different business mindset. And so what the goal is that you can basically do your marketing through writing short stories, which is still creating stories in your worlds. And so the platform is a short story network. If you just want to look at this from a technical standpoint, it's a network of short stories that exist in all the different universes and different worlds that are in the multiverse. And readers are reading those short stories, and the stories that compel them and they are interested in and get pulled into, they can follow up and find the author's books and novels so they can get the rest of the story. And authors can, if they choose to get into this network, you will be a part of a community. So you're getting another, like, once again, a benefit of being in the shared world. And you're helping build this bigger story, but you don't have to worry about continuity or anything because you're just writing in your own world. And you still own and control all of your universe and your intellectual property. Like, there's nothing about this where you're going to have to share any of that. It's the same way as if you're writing completely alone, because your world, your novels, that's your property. And so why short stories? I mean, like, imagine you're thinking, why would you build this network based on short stories? It comes back to Netflix and that culture that we've created of binge consumption. It's the thing that once you have my attention, once you get me pulled into your world, I just want as much as I can get. And so I want more and more and more. But on top of that, we all have shorter attention spans. And so a short story, you can get a full story arc, but in a much shorter time to read it. And also it's easier and quicker to write, and it's easier and quicker to consume. And that makes it very social media friendly. And so what we are doing right now, building our fan page, we are sharing short stories from that network on our fan page, and readers are responding very well to it. They are asking for more. We're building a relationship with them because we're sharing stories with them on Facebook. And later, once we built up the fan base to a size that we want it to be, we're going to be doing more Facebook Lives to just promote the platform and the authors directly. And so, just to give you an examples here, just you can see the engagement. This was from this story right here about Brooke wrote a story about a woman who was taking care of her child, and it's called Confession. And as you can see, this was the first story we published. We have, at the time that I took the screenshot, we had like about 77 likes, 16 shares. I know right now, at the time of recording, there's over 96 shares of this on Facebook, and there's a lot more comments. I mean, it's a very popular, and you can see that people are liking and they're responding very well to the story. And so, and we published more, and people are really engaged. So we have found out that short stories are very Facebook friendly, and any platform where text is a big part of it, it can be shared on social media. Now, the story, the multiverse, the project is in and of itself a shared universe, because remember, this is a transmedia project. So the multiverse has a story that we're going to tell, and that story is a transmedia super story. And because it's a transmedia super story, we can get into all the social media platforms, because we can adapt the stories to whatever medium we want to. And that story is the connecting tissue to every universe in the multiverse, because it's basically the story about the multiverse. And there will be multiple authors telling the story. And so I want to very quickly go through the main storyline, so that, as you're trying to decide if you want to join the multiverse and bring your worlds to the project, let me tell you why. Let me tell you the story, and then you can see how it works, and you can see how it can become a cross-genre thing. Because if you're probably wondering, well, this sounds very science fiction, fantasy, paranormal, that type of thing. What if I just write contemporary? What if I just write historical or something of that nature? Well, your story still fit into what we're trying to do for several reasons. One, think about how complex a world is. A world could have science fiction and fantasy things happening in it, and it could just have simple romance stories in it. It could have simple contemporary stories in it. A world itself, in and of itself, doesn't belong to one genre specifically, unless you develop it that way. But a world can be very open to all genres. That's one reason. Number two, the storyline that we're creating is also built. I'm developing that story to be where all stories can come from that. And so let me explain. The main story is going to be set primarily in Universe 8. You probably noticed that Multiverse 8 is the name of the project. Why 8? 8 is nothing more than the infinity sign turned sideways. And you can't put an infinity sign in a URL, so we chose 8. Now, multiverse.com is already taken at the time of recording this video. Hopefully one day we can get that URL, but that's why it's called Multiverse 8. And it's not really because of the 8th universe, it's just because 8 is the infinity sign, so it's kind of like a symbolic number. The story premise deals with our world being divided by petty differences. And so, and I'm going to go into why that is, but the short stories that we're sharing on social media are basically in the premise of how broken our world is and how much better it could be. And when I say broken, I mean we're divided on everything, it seems. I mean race, religion, culture, sexuality. I mean, I could just go on and on. Politics. We're so divided by everything, and our world is broken in that sense. And the stories that we share are going to deal with cross-genre elements about cultural conflicts, societal issues, and human relationships. And so when you look at that, that's why it's cross-genre. It can deal with anything that you want to deal with in the main storyline. Now, as far as the science fiction and the science fiction element of this, how did this all come to be? What is the storyline itself? And here's what it is. And this is not set in stone because we're still in development, but this gives you an idea of how this came to be. In Universe 8 of the multiverse, we're dealing with the future. And so humanity has solved the problem of death. to save the brightest minds for space and time exploration. So this is what's happened. Humanity finally realized our brightest minds, the people who are um, helping us to develop new technologies and to advance human society, space exploration, the whole works. We keep losing those minds to death, right? And so, as time has gone on in this universe, in this world, humanity figured out how to transport a person's consciousness from the human body into an android or some type of computer database. Now, obviously, I'm not going to sit here and try to go into the details of that, but they figured that out. And what it allowed them to do is keep our brightest minds, the consciousness of the brightest minds around, and allow them to continue to work and to figure out how to do space exploration, time exploration, that sort of thing. And they do that. And so, as they explored time and space in that universe, they became aware that there was actually a multiverse out there. They became aware of the fictional multiverse that exists. And they started developing plans for the universal exploration that they have in their own universe, but also for multiversal exploration. But the problem, they ran across a problem. Their sun began to go supernova. Basically, the sun is dying. And they had to make a choice. Do they just take a gamble and try to put all society on a ship and go out into the universe? Or do they want to take a gamble and send humanity back in time? And the reason why they can actually send humanity back in time is because those brightest minds and those androids figured out how to travel, like to explore space. And as you know, as you go through space, it takes a long time to get anywhere, even going at light speed. But because they were androids, they could simply just go into sleep and then wake up in the future, farther out into the universe. And then they figured out how to travel back in time to the time when they left. That's how they learned. That's what happened. They learned how to travel back in time to their own time. And that's how their society kept growing and advancing in technology. Well, now they're talking about but that was on a very small scale. And so now they have a problem. They got to take all society, and they either have to put them on try to put them in the machine like the androids, like the brightest minds, and go out into the universe, or put them in an android and send them back in time, to our generation. And they decide to do our generation, to go back in time and try to save the sun, or to at least figure out how to get out into outer space and to save humanity for the future. And that's what they decided to do. However, once they get back here, they realize they're running into all the same problems that we are experiencing today. Like, the whole world is in division. Like, their society is more utopian in that they were brought together. They were together. It wasn't perfect, but it was together. Ours is broken and divided. And now, in order to continue that space exploration, time exploration, and multiverse exploration, they have to bring the world together. They got to find a way to bring humanity together like they did in the future. Of course, they're going to have problems with that, and they have to decide if they want to keep the android factor a secret. Because if we're divided about you're this color and I'm that color, and we can't come together really because of that, how much more divided would we be if they're like, well, you're not even human, you're an android. They're not, like, if they tell the world that, will they work with us? And I say us, will they work with the future humans? That's the problem they're going to run into, and that's the problem they got to solve. And so they have to decide if they want to keep that a secret, and if that secret ever got out, what would happen? And that's basically the storyline of Multiverse 8. Now, the exact story on how that unfolds will be a collective effort of writers who will want to contribute to that. Because this is not just one person's story. This is a lot of people's story telling this. And so, how would this all come together and work? The people who are building the project itself, like the platform and building the audience, we would focus on doing the marketing, and the writers just focus on what you do best, write your short stories, write your novels like you always have. And we will focus on the media project, the transmedia project, building the fan base so that you can do that. But obviously, we would ask all the authors, if you're writing short stories on the platform, please promote those short stories in your books. Because if we can get all the authors to promote their short stories on the platform, we bring more fans into the story world, which is what the whole point of all this is that we can all win if we all will share the multiverse and bring in readers and fans so that everyone can be discoverable. And so, I've already talked about a few of these points, but we would bring in more diverse readers onto the platform with this. People who just watch movies, people who read comic books, people who listen to audio dramas. Like a lot of those people read books also. They just don't read a lot of them. Maybe they read 1 or 2 books a year, like I was talking about before. And you could get those people onto the platform, though, then it becomes more readers for everybody. So let me talk about the platform itself really quickly here, and I'll be done. Basically, we have built the platform where readers can follow your universe. So they sign up and they can find your universe, and they can follow it so that whenever you write a short story, it goes down their feed. They have a homepage feed, just like any other social media network, where the stories that they want are going to show up. But if they don't have if they're not following your universe, they can discover short stories through genre or just straight up look up through universes. So they can just randomly pick a universe and find out who reads that. Also, we would ask you, can we share your short stories on our social media with links to your books and to your universe? And we will promote those short stories in that way as well. Readers, like they can just basically, there's a featured part of the site as well, where they can just look at featured stories that we have on the platform. Now, this will allow authors to promote their novels through the short stories. But I want you to think of your short story as being a sales page, right? You write a great short story, and then that short story pulls the reader into your world. They want more. And then there's a link that goes to your novels and your books where they can get the rest of the story. And I know this works because I posted a story by Brooke it was a story called Lazarus. And she wrote the story where the ending, you could accept it as an ending, but you knew there was a lot more to the story. And I have gotten so many requests for more to that story because they're saying you can't end it right there. You have to tell me the rest. So Brooke has agreed, and she's writing a second short story to that first short story. But if she had written a novel over that, she could easily just say, look, this story leads into that story. You go buy that story. And they would go buy the story because they would want more. I personally was a part of that because when I read it, I was like, oh, I want more to this story. I would love to read this story. But she didn't have a novel written at the time. But I know if she did, I would go buy it. So that is why you have to think about short stories as being a sales page, because you're literally selling your story through that short story. And if you're using your head, you can and should write stories that are connected to your novels, not just standalone stories, but stories that exist in the worlds of the stories that you've already written or that you are writing. And obviously, always put links at the end of your stories to your novels, which is part of what this is all about too. So our ultimate goal is to build a subscription-based book club for novels that exist in the multiverse. Think subscription boxes. Like there's a lot of book clubs out there that are subscription boxes, but those books are just, new books or really good books that have been curated, and they put it in a box. They put other stuff in the box and they send it to you, and people love it because you're curating great stories for them and they're getting cool little things, and they pay a subscription for that. What we're trying to build is a subscription box, but through an app. So like it would be in the e-reader or whatever. And the stories themselves would be multiversal stories. They would either be from the main storyline or they would be from the novels that our authors that write in the multiverse have already published, and we know they're really good. We curate them and like, this is a really good novel. It exists in the multiverse. So we would like to basically put that into the subscription that our readers are paying for, and then we share the proceeds with the author. And they still would own their book 100% and can make, and put it up for sale on Amazon or whatever. But that's how it would work, because we would have a book club that's dedicated to just multiverse readers. So let me show you what the platform looks like right now. This is what the homepage looks like, and you can go to multiverse8.com, www.multiverse8.com. This is the platform. Once you sign up, you're going to come to a dashboard that's for readers. And if you are an author, what you would need to do is go to the Patreon page and basically contribute to the community. And I'll talk about it in just a second. But once I've converted you over to an author, this is what it's going to look like, and this is where you can get your information from. But there is a home feed right here where all the stories are going to go down, and I'm going to show you that in just a second. But this is the universal page. It's like on WordPress, it's a category page, but I have developed a follow button here where people can follow your category, and it goes to your feed. And so everybody's going to have their own universe, which is a category. And what you publish is going to go down that feed, and it's also going to be going down whatever genre feed that it belongs to. And so this is the home page feed. This is this page right here. There's a picture, there's a description, there's going to be information, the title, the whole thing, like normally on the WordPress site, except this page is a special page. It's because this is the page where the stories go down that they're following. So like, this is not just the home page of a blog. This is the page where people have subscribed to a universe and they want the stories from that author. Now, if you stop and think about that, the power in that is that now whenever you write a short story and you publish it, the reader sees that story, they read that story. Now you have an opportunity to really bring them back into your world and then send them to your novels for the full story or for the whole story. Now, I would create full characters, like full story arc stories. Don't just write a story and then leave them hanging, because that might make them mad. And just like they can follow your universe, they can unfollow it as well. So be well aware of that. Do not spam them, and do not write poor stories. You want to write stories that they read, they love, and they want more of, and they'll go buy your books. Okay, and so basically, let's talk now about how once you sign up, you're signing up as a reader. So when you sign up as a reader, you need to become an author, obviously. And so because this project is very young, we have not developed a platform that we ultimately want to go with that's scalable. And so we're using WordPress and developing it to build the platform to meet our needs, and it's doing that. But we have to do a lot of things manually. So what we decided to do is to create a Patreon account here. And if you want to become an author, what we ask that you do is to just make one contribution to the community to help pay for this thing. And so if you join the $5 monthly level, we will convert you over to an author. Now, you can cancel it after that. You don't have to continue to do that, or you can continue to do this because this is ultimately where we get the funds to do the transmedia project. It takes a lot of money to develop these novels, to develop audio dramas, to develop comic books and all these different formats. It takes money to do that, plus to support the website, and to do the advertising, the marketing, to do all of these things. It takes money to do that. And so what we wanted to do was to create, instead of trying to charge people to become an author, is to get everyone to contribute. Now, if you want to wait till the project matures, you can do that, and you can join everything for free, because ultimately that is our plan, that once you can join the platform, and then it's free for you to do whatever you need to do. But until that happens, you would have to do it this way. So let me explain to you what we're talking about here with the rewards. If you want to contribute and become an author, for $5 contribution a month, you would become a community member on Patreon, where you're going to get voting rights. What that means is, when we write these stories, we have to choose which author we want to do the stories, and then pay them to write the stories. What we're going to do is to narrow it down to 2 or 3 authors that we think have great ideas. We know they write really well and can represent the community, and we will allow our Patreon members to vote on which author and whose story they want to tell for the main storyline. And that's one of the rewards of just being a $5 a month contributor. We would do that through a poll on Patreon, and Patreon has a mobile app, so it's very convenient for everyone to get on. And obviously, we're going to convert you over to an author. And then once you become an author, you're always an author. You can stop contributing or whatever you want to do, and you're still going to have access to do that. Now, let me just explain these other sections really, really quickly. There is a sponsored story section on the site right here. It's called Featured. And what is happening on that page is you can pay to have your story on that page. So that it's not a feed where there's new stories being added. As long as you're a member of that tier, your story is going to be there. And I'm thinking there's going to be around 20 stories per genre. So that anyone that likes that particular genre, they can scroll down those 20 stories, and then your story is going to be there for it to be found. So if you want to, so it just really depends on how much you want to contribute to the community. You get more for how much more you contribute. For $10 a month, that you're going to get all this on the $5 level, but also get that section as well. Basically, we have another tier here for $25 a month, which is it's a special little feature that I had developed. Is that it's kind of like Twitter. If you ever got on Twitter, when you first signed up, you don't have any followers and you're not following anybody. So what they try to do is get you to follow people so that your feed starts getting filled with tweets. Well, it's the same type of deal with our readers. We would like for them to be able to sign up and then have stories on their homepage feed already there. And so what we did is we allowed people that contribute $25 a month to this project to be auto followed by every new reader on the platform. So basically, if you pay the $25 a month to contribute to the project, every subscriber to the site, to the platform, is going to be following your universe. And so, but remember, they can always unfollow you. They're not stuck there. If you're not writing good stories and they don't like what you're doing, they can unfollow you at any time. But they will be following you to get started. Because if you don't, if you're not a member of this, like, they have to discover you through the genre or the featured section. That's how they would find you. So this is just a way to make sure that you're followed by everyone that's signing up to the project. And so, and obviously, however many people who followed you before you joined that $25 a month level, let's say you were a $5 member, and then after a couple of months you decide you want to do $25. Well, once you start the $25 a month contribution, every fan is going to be following your account. You're going to be following your universe. But whenever you decide that you don't want to continue to do that for $25 a month, you're going to lose all those followers, minus the ones that were already following your account. Like, anybody that followed you before, they're still going to be following you. But anybody who everybody else that you got when you were on that level, you would lose them. So it's just fair for everybody. And then obviously there's a $100 a month level, which is all it is if you just want to simply put a sponsored ad in our email autoresponder series, which is basically every subscriber that signs up, we have their email address, and we promote the project and the platform to them through emails. And what we allow people to do is if they want to pay $100 a month, is to have a sponsored ad in that sequence, so that every subscriber that signs up to the project, is going to eventually get an email, which is your sponsored ad for your stories. And remember, your stories exist in the multiverse, so you should write your ad reminding them that this is not just some story. This story belongs in the multiverse and they should read it. So that's what the four tiers are for the Patreon community. And what it does is it creates a way for us to fund the marketing to build the platform and to bring new readers and fans to the project, where you can build a fan base and get more readers to your novels and stories. Now, hopefully that explains everything to you guys. Hopefully, I would love for you to join us. I would love for you to bring your worlds to the multiverse. And if at any time you decided you did not want to be a part of this, it is not hard or a problem for you just simply to move your universe out. It's not hard. Remember, we don't own anything that you write. You own everything, your novels, everything. And so all you're doing is saying, yes, my universe is going to be on your platform, or no, it's not. That's all that's happening here. And if you are going to be a part of the platform, then you can write short stories to take advantage of the reader base, the readership that we have, that everyone's working together to build, to get more fans, to get more readers, and to make more sales with your books. Well, anyways, guys, thank you so much. For just $5 a month, you can become an author. You can cancel after the first month, and it's still fine. You're still an author. Or you can simply wait until the project matures and you don't have to pay anything at all. That's eventually where we're going to get to. We're still developing mobile apps for this platform. We're still developing this platform itself. And if we want you to grow with us, we want you to help us and contribute to this. And hopefully you can see the potential power of what this transmedia project can do for everyone. So with that, guys, I thank you for your time. I hope you decide to join us, and I will see you in one shape or form, either on the fan page or on the platform. Always feel free to reach out to me. My name's Paul Robson once again, and I will respond to you as soon as possible, guys. And hopefully we can make this thing work together. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, and hopefully we can make this thing work together.